London, 1872. I've entered into the service of a new gentleman. It would seem he is a gambling man. Okay, so I've done this game once before. Went through Europe, Asia, and then North America, and actually made it in 60 days. Pretty straightforward. But there are a few other routes that I wanted to try. For instance, I think there was a way to go through the Arctic, because I remember seeing Arctic gear in some of the equipment that you could get. So, let's try to do that. And if not, because sometimes not all routes are open to you, I'm going to try to head through Africa. Monsieur Phileas Fogg returned home early from the Reform Club, and in a newfangled steam carriage besides. I helped him down. And the iron-lunged, steam-driven horses clattered away. "Passepartout," he said. "We are going around the world." "Very good, monsieur," I murmured dutifully, not believing a word of it. "We shall circumnavigate the globe within 80 days. He was quite calm as he proposed this wild scheme. We leave for Paris on the 8:25 in an hour. But of course," I answered, still extremely suspicious. He nodded. "Good. Pack an altimeter and my evening jacket. There is not a moment to waste." So, our character is Passepartout. And we have a limited number of funds. Now, the way to get more funds... Oh, and depending upon what dialogue actions you get, depends on, like, how your character... what traits your character gets. Now... Oh yeah, time is always going, so we better hurry and pack. Well, I said evening jacket, better get the Europe... And... No, not... No, I want the... You know what? I guess we're not going to bring it. I don't... So, yeah. And I should be able to bring it. It's like... same size. Aha! So, we're not going to bring that after all. Okay, everything I want to bring is bits, because this way you can unlock shipping routes around Europe. And for going to Scandinavia, that's important. Yes, so we got to try to get to Amsterdam, I think. So hopefully if we go to Paris, the route will open up to Amsterdam. And then hopefully from there, further north. Let's depart. So you have limited amount of space and how many suitcases you can bring on certain trips. And the option travel, this will be a bearable option. It'll depend on how stressful it is for the gentleman that we work for. Because we have to keep him in high spirits by keeping him well groomed, you know, maintaining his attire, stuff like that. The mechanical horses raced past Piccadilly Circus in Pall Mall faster than a team of thoroughbreds. Even so, the whistle of the 8:25 was blowing as we pulled up to Charing Cross Station. "We have no tickets," I exclaimed, in horror. "That does not signify," Monsieur Fogg remarked over his shoulder as he hurried toward the platform. "We must not miss this train." But I dashed to the ticket booth, judging that there was a moment to spare. Elbowing aside a few ladies and gentlemen who were ambling about as though this were Brighton Pier and not a busy train station. 2 singles to Paris, I demanded breathlessly. The guard raised his pen with agonizing slowness. Leaving tomorrow, he intoned. Leaving immediately, I insisted, and hurry. The whistle of the train shrieked once more. I drummed my fingers on the counter and cursed under my breath. From behind me, I heard another whistle. The guard inscribed one ticket, then the other, with a painstaking hand, then passed them to me. The final whistle blew long and slow and damning. The 8:25 train was pulling away. I leapt wildly for the guardrail and hauled myself aboard, one-handed, tickets clutched in the other fist. I confess, my friends, I had been an acrobat in my youth, before becoming a valet. Apparently the 2 professions were not so different as they seemed. We were passing Dartford when I located Monsieur Fogg in one of the compartments. He looked up briefly and returned to his newspaper. I told the ticket inspector that you'd be appearing presently, he remarked, unperturbed. And I guess we get to make conversation with him. I'm at your service, Monsieur Fogg. Passepartout. Journey. Tell me, Monsieur, what is the purpose of our journey? I have made a hefty wager, and I do not intend to lose. This journey will be most expensive, Monsieur. Indeed, but we can earn a little from buying and selling our possessions as we travel. So yeah, that's how you can get money. For instance, that's why I brought the wax cylinder, because it said you can sell it for a decent amount in Paris. London's smog gave way to rolling hills and the pastures of the Kentish countryside, still untouched by the hand of technological advancement. We passed the day in silence until a guard rapped on our door a few miles before Dover. We are about to submerge, he warned. Takes some people a bit funny, so watch out. What do you mean, submerge? I cried. This is the London to Paris Amphitrite Express, he explained, as though to a particularly dim-witted child. The submersible train? Talk of all the London papers? Then this is the Mer train, I exclaimed. He made a face. Bloody journalists and their silly names, he muttered. Every inch of her has been examined and stamped with the artificer's seal. This is the world's only bath-escape locomotive. I pressed my face to the window glass as the fins above the Amphitrite's wheels extended with a hydraulic hiss. Night fell and we plunged past the end of the track into the freezing water of the English Channel. So apparently Fogg approved of our reaction to that. So normally something would pop up letting us groom him, because, you know, grooming him apparently makes him happy. It's like a cat or a monkey. The Amphitrite plowed through the water overnight and splashed up into wider gauge French tracks at Calais as dawn broke. I began to consider what we might require for our journey. Loose clothing for hot weather and furs for cold, driving clothes for roads, and weatherproof gear for boats. Will we venture north or south? I inquired, deep in thought. East, he replied with utter certainty. Even so, there are several routes to consider. But which is fastest? I believe, said he, that is what we shall put to the test. Parbleu. I scarcely know what to think. We arrived at Paris Gare du Nord just after 1 o'clock. Automaton porters lifted our luggage and then our persons onto the platform with long, delicately filigreed iron arms. Paris, city of my heart. I was home, but not to stay. Okay, hopefully. Yes, let's go to the market to sell this. No, wait, I didn't bring it. You know what? We don't need it. know what we should bring? I don't know if we're going to Copenhagen. We're not going to Berlin. Let's bring it just in case. Oh, we can get an extra suitcase. So, we'll be a good valet. I don't think we need that. Okay, let's do some exploring. Exploring is how you unlock routes and find out what's available. Aha! Yeah. Amsterdam. Very good. We had a few hours to spare. I asked Monsieur Fogg if I might enjoy my city before we had to leave. Indeed, and should you learn anything of note, be sure to relay it. I nodded and headed into town. The talk on the streets was of one thing only, an enormous, elegant oval stadium, constructed upon the green fields of Champ de Mars, and containing the technological marvels, art, amusement parks, and milling crowds of the World's Fair of 1872. I ventured inside the grand illuminated pavilions of the exposition. An artificer was replacing an arc light which had burned out. She first disconnected the strange machine powering the lights. It had a spinning iron wheel which was wound around with a series of armature coils. "What is that device, artificer?" I asked politely, my eyes straining to the copper lily pin which proclaimed her profession. "It's a bleeding nuisance is what it is," the artificer grumbled in a thick Yorkshire accent. "These Graham machines are finicky beasts." "Graham machines?" I inquired. "Well, it's a... Oh, never mind." She waved my question away. "It's a steam engine, all right? Only it doesn't make steam. Will that do? I hate explaining this stuff to laymen." The harshness of her tone was belied by the gentle touch as she unscrewed the arc light's globe of enameled glass and replaced the 2 carbon rods within. She reconnected the supply, and the 10 Yoblakov candles connected in series lit up once more. "They are miraculous," I breathed. The artificer snorted. "Their hard work is what they are. Miracles indeed." But her mouth softened into a small, proud smile. She looked at her pocket watch, cursed, and hurried off, dropping something as she went. Let's be polite. I hurried after her to return it, and she thanked me. "My medallion. I'll need that to get my lunch from the canteen. Thank you." I bowed and returned, and she giggled. "Stop that, you'll make me blush." She rubbed the coin thoughtfully. "I was given this for my work in Istanbul, you know. I made a very special automaton. I think it works as a driver now, on the route up from Izmir. I think that's right." "An automaton who can drive? Of course, is that so strange?" I could only shrug. Who knows what is normal in this modern world? I looked about me once more. Avenues sprawled in every direction between the inviting illuminated pavilions of the exposition. I took a stroll down the Avenue of Nations, lined with buildings in the styles of the nations of the world, and manned by foreign delegates in a national dress. Although the newly formed German Empire was conspicuous absentee in the city it had so recently conquered. The Zulu Federation had built a replica village and brought a delegation of 400 diplomats and warriors, which made for a busy, impressive stand. Above the display was a fine pharaoh-type of the great emperor, Castu... I'm terrible with some of these names. Keswayo, in his palace in Yolandi. One of the young impy warriors dropped his fierce look and winked brightly at a passing child, who erupted into shy giggles. You have made a powerful friend, I remarked to the child, who seemed startled to receive this news and ran off into the crowd. I turned away hurriedly. Crowds of tourists jostled and heaved past, their eyes wide with wonder. Let's go into the Artificers Guild. I headed towards the red and purple tents of the Artificers Guild, draped with banners emblazoned with their copper lily sigil. A steam-powered automaton orchestra played gleaming brass instruments, while a mechanical sommelier popped the cork from a champagne bottle and poured out bubbling over glasses for passing tourists. One of the artificers had his hands deep inside a human-shaped automaton, rummaging through its clockwork innards. He took out a piece of engraved glass and peered at it with a jeweler's loupe. "Dashed thing," he cursed in upper-class English tones, and then looked up. "Oh, hello." "I didn't mean to interrupt," I said politely. "Nonsense, young man," he waved the glass shard dismissively. "I'm trying to build an automaton that can cook, you see. But it's not doing well, or not going well." He looked mournful. "This one can't even fry a chip." "How long have you been trying?" I asked. "It's been a dream of mine ever since I was a young lad at boarding school. It's why I became an artificer." The wistful tone dropped into horror. The things old Mrs. Parsons could do to a cabbage, the tender stomachs of Britain's youth would be much safer in mechanical hands. Yeah, this isn't particularly interesting. I smiled and left this man to his work. Clearly not all artificers were the adepts we gave them credit for. My feet were tiring, and the hour was growing late. I returned to Monsieur Fogg, who was eating a meal of plain boiled beef à l'anglais. It's been over a decade since I've taken French. "Did you enjoy the exposition?" my master inquired. Definitely. And I nodded. "We are unspeakably lucky to live in such an age of invention," I declared. "It will certainly make it easier to win my wager," Monsieur Fogg replied, mildly. I dreamed that night of mechanical wonders and automatons with beautifully enameled faces, knowing little of the strange inventions and stranger peoples I would soon encounter my journey around the world. Okay, let's plan our trip, because I want to get to Amsterdam. Okay, so private car that departs for tomorrow. We only have one luggage. Okay. 1, 2... Okay, we gotta stay in the hotel, and then we gotta sell that. We took a hotel for the night. We will be comfortable here, Monsieur Fogg remarked, but traveling overnight will often be more efficient. Where possible. We cannot travel where it is not possible, certainly, he replied. Still, the surrounds of the Hotel Ritz were most enjoyable. I guess we cannot... Nope. Oh, yeah, no. You remembered? Okay. No, we'll just... Okay. It's a bit bothersome, but shouldn't be too bad because it's just a private car. I don't know if that's actually us driving. We found a member of the Coachmakers Guild to carry us to Amsterdam. She loaded the case onto the back, stoked the boiler, and took off at high speed along the coastal road, swerving around each corner with considerable skill and, I think, a touch of showmanship. I clung on tight. This would be a terrific ride. So, our character is now zestful. I don't know where you can look up to see what... let's make conversation with her. Greetings, driver. I cannot drive well if you are talking to me. Uh, the route from Amsterdam to Christiania is timetabled. You mentioned boats. I've been told Cairo can be reached from Beirut aboard the merchant trader. Can we get to Copenhagen? Yes, one can travel aboard the airship Northern Lights from Christiania to Copenhagen. What about... No, I don't want to go to any of those places. Okay, let's check out this one. Have you heard that traders in Pyongyang will pay fantastic amounts for emeralds for Omsk? Alright, well, maybe we can find a roundabout way. From Amsterdam... Or maybe there'll be a more direct way to get to Copenhagen. Once or twice, the metal-rimmed wheels lifted the chassis clear from the road on one side, only to bump down after a chuff and puff more of the engine. We were jolted around like so much... let's go with this one. We must have topped 40, perhaps even 50 miles per hour. A fabulous way to travel, the Polish inventor Bozek, who had first attached a perfectly decent locomotive engine underneath a flimsy wooden crate, was clearly a genius. Such cars were growing in popularity, starting from their use in farmsteads and extending up through the classes. It was said the King of Sweden now drove one, though presumably only to show solidarity with the beleaguered potato farmers. That's kind of funny, potato farmers driving steam cars or whatever. As we rattled along, I spoke to our driver about what lay ahead and learned that collectors in Minsk will pay fantastic amounts for accordions from Warsaw. Would they? Well, we're not going to there. But we can sell this. And I want to get the carriage rides, and I guess we could sell that too. I forget. Once you learn it, then it's no big deal. Then you can get rid of it. So we can take a private car to Copenhagen after all. So that's the nice thing about it. It opens up routes. You're not having to go by rumors or what you find out. Now, the route that I took was through Bucharest and then taking some big train that had just opened up that crossed through Asia. And then once we were about to leave Russia, we got arrested, thrown into a military prison. It was not fun. Let's take a look. No, I don't know. It could be a bit of a risk. But we're not going to Munich. Anyway. Let's plan the trip. Okay, so it arrives tomorrow and we only get one suitcase. Okay, I guess we stay at the hotel. Though the people of Amsterdam move about its Kennelside streets. Gods, I cannot talk today. Kennelside streets with a sense of optimism and good cheer. One look at their buildings tell another story. Perhaps 200 years ago this was the center of the world, but these days tulips are no longer considered more valuable than gold, and the importance of Amsterdam is a little faded. I sympathize. Bien sûr. France's own position has been precarious since the war with Prussia, which did not, to put it mildly, resolve in our favor. Would I walk along the Seine one day, thinking back to our days of lost glory? I approached a street peddler for advice, who greeted me with a cheerful smile beneath a caterpillar-like mustache. What's the fastest way on from here? I asked. Car, I suppose. The roads are good, the canals used to be better, but now they seem almost out of date, he sighed. It is a curse to be rich in the past, but the time the future rolls around, you are poor again. Maybe you'll be rich again sometime, I remarked, more from sheer optimism than any true conviction. The peddler reached inside his pocket. Buy an apple, £1. Sure. I bought it and took it with a smile. Sure. No, wait, should we tell him? Let's do so. We are going around the world, I declared. Aha, he replied. You are like the influenza. What is the cheapest way out of the city, I asked. He mused. Most likely the hydrofoil, heading north to Norway. He shrugged. It is fine enough if you don't mind being jolted about, and it's not exactly going around the world unless you don't mind which way. Is Norway worth visiting? He shrugged and made a vague gesture. I hear the Norwegians are moving underground. Who knows? They have strange ways over there. There was, of course, the route following the canals south. In particular, the route towards the Rhine, though I feared that to end up in Munich after nearly a week of travel would hardly please my hard-driving master. So many choices. All that remained was to choose how best to depart. I thought we already... Thought we had already, but I want to go... No. Okay, so... Okay, so apparently we can negotiate. Well, we got... most generous, no charge at 12 noon. The ticket will require a further £34, though. Okay. I guess we could have brought more, but... Oh, mild seas. So it'll be a bit bothersome. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of this ship. Or sky ship, airship, whatever. Our route was to be by hydrofoil. I don't think it's a modern contraption invented, so I had heard, by a mad Italian contessa by the name of Orsini. I bounded aboard, keen to try the thing out for myself. Monsieur Fogg waved to the pilot to start the engine. The ship roared into life and then rose up 2 feet into the air, above the surface of the waves. Let's, he's pretty good. Let's make conversation. Greetings, Monsieur Crows. We can talk if you must, but I am piloting. What do you know about Christiania? The Norwegians are very suspicious people in some ways. Let's ask about that route. Who cares, but you can pick up Viking drinking horns in Stockholm that will sell for a fortune in Antalya. Helsinki. All I'll say is this, you can obtain buffalo hides in Helsinki that will sell a fortune in Odessa. An apple? Thank you. Stockholm. You might be interested that Stockholm is linked to Warsaw aboard the Baltic ferry, but the fare is worth saving up for. I don't know what Regina is. All I'll say is this, some buyers will pay well for evening jackets from Regina, but answer me this if I could. I would live out here on the water. How nice. The Freedom, Passepartout, the Endless Water. Okay, I am done talking, but I guess we're going. For instance, the fastest way to Helsinki from here is through Tromsø, which I probably butchered that. I do not want to go to St. Petersburg, but sure, let's ask about that. Yes, one can travel aboard the Baltic ferry from Helsinki to St. Petersburg. Ekaterinburg? And he just wants to leave. Understandable. But our goal is to head north. Not go to Russia, where we get thrown into military prison again. The ride was rather thrilling, rather like the carousel at a fairground. We bumped and ricocheted along the waves. I shouted for joy, and I think my master was pleased for me, though he expressed so much sentiment for him, or no such sentiment for himself. Remarkably, we were to spend the night on the very edge of the North Sea. The engine was switched off, and a domed canopy extended from the sides of the ship and closed overhead. In the last moments before it sealed, I saw a flicker of color in the sky. The aurora? I do not know. We sat in close quarters and talked in hushed tones in the strange little bubble, floating on the froth of the world. Sounds like it would be a very interesting experience. Let's groom him, just to make him feel better. Now, I think if his, I don't know, morale gets too low, then he just gives up, I think is what happens. The next day was much shorter, and we cruised into the harbor at Christiania. You'll find the place empty, our pilot remarked. I warn you. Why is that? I demanded. He shrugged. Last time I saw it, it was empty. That's all I know. Empty? But where are all the people? We disembarked onto the shore, and the man turned about and was lost from sight. An empty city, after all, offers no passengers. Well, I don't know if this was such a good idea. We gotta explore. New routes discovered. Awesome, that's where we want to go. The streets of Christiania were completely deserted. We did not see anyone anywhere. I was put in mind of what happened to Belgrade. Surely the Austro-Hungarian Empire was not also moving north. Who could be mad enough to engage a war in two directions at once? Ah, well, except for Napoleon, of course, but then look how that fiasco had turned out. This is an eerie place, Monsieur Fogg remarked, an uncharacteristic display of emotion. Certainly the silent streets had a certain menace to them. Ah, we must find the municipal center of the government, I replied. A city cannot be left totally abandoned. A little more walking and we came to the Parliament building, and beside it a set of freshly built steps leading down into the ground. The passage was lit by gas lamps. I paused at the entrance. I listened by the entrance and heard very faintly a rattling sound emerging. Monsieur Fogg cocked his head. Cartwheels, he deduced, and singing? I went below, and sure enough there were lights, and then shops, and then people and carriages and restaurants. And indeed, an entire city built beneath the surface. Why these people had moved their entire city downwards, I did not care. It was enough to find a hearty meal and to reassure ourselves that our journey would continue. I spent a little while browsing markets, of which there were plenty here below, though I found little of interest except for a chess set with pieces made of finely carved walrus ivory. Yours for £100, the vendor declared. It's highly valuable. I paid her and packed the set carefully away into a case. It was a fine souvenir, but looked like it also might be worth something in trade. We're not going to Rome. That would be ridiculous to travel from up here down to Rome. Below ground, life was bustling. We found a hotel carved into the wall of an underground bluff that stretched down for hundreds of meters, well out of sight. I asked a passerby what was down there, and they smiled with that Nordic slyness I was learning to recognize. A dragon, was the reply. Entering the hotel, we found it warm and well staffed. Monsieur Fogg, implacable as ever, was quite comfortable, but I still had the worrying sense that it makes no sense. This cave we were in might be sealed up. That this cave we were in might be sealed up and we would never escape. Over dinner we were joined by a German man named Otto Lidenbrock, who asked us our purpose in visiting the city. I don't know. We are on our way to Russia, I replied. He shrugged without much interest. Russia is merely another country, and it is stuffed full of Russians to boot, he observed. I have a more interesting project. I am going, and he pointed a finger, downwards towards the dragon. Into the abyss, Otto nodded. If I can discover the way in, yes, but I fear I have not yet found it. Tomorrow we will see. I begin my expedition downwards towards the very center of the earth. I thought it sounded a grand adventure, but I was, of course, quite occupied with my own. Oh, it would have been interesting if we could have, like, some adventure where we gone through the center of the earth and came out on the other side. Okay, let's see if we can depart for... Okay, we're going to Tromsø, which I don't think that's how it's pronounced because of that weird looking... okay, I guess we're going just in time. So, Fjordic Flyer. And then hopefully from there we can find a way through the Arctic. We found ourselves in an airship dock, blowing clouds of white steam from our mouths as we waited to board. The captain, a shockingly blonde lady with stern sculpted features, brought us tin cups of hot tea and insisted on punching us each on the arm. I apologized to my master once she had gone. I punched back in comradely fashion, and she frowned, but beyond that, there was no particular rebuke, except, of course, from my master. It is good for a pilot to have some spirit, he remarked. It suggests they may not be totally hopeless in circumstances of some pressure. We boarded the airship soon after and lifted up, ready to trace the delicate lacework of the Norwegian coastline on our way north. I guess we'll talk with gentlemen. Tromsø, for instance, you can get to Helsinki from Tromsø by freight train, but the journey is a tiring one. Minsk. Well, the quickest way to Minsk is from here. From here is via Helsinki. Smeerenburg. Did you know you can pick up high-grade iron ore in Smeerenburg? You can sell for profit in Chicago? Wow, he is so knowledgeable of all these little facts about what you can find and sell and where it's valuable. Almost like an amateur trader. I confess to a certain bafflement as to my master's intentions with this particular leg of our journey. Perhaps we were to circumnavigate from north to south and back. We might travel down across the Americas to Cape Horn and then across the very bottom of the world to Australia. Of course, any serious polar expedition would be properly equipped, rather than traveling with an ordinary carpet bag. Towards evening, the airship descended towards a small fishing town, nestled between the two dramatic slopes. It was, I think, the smallest place I had ever seen. Yep. Interesting. Could possibly be an interesting start in Crusaders Kings 2. If you're doing the Viking era. Start. Well, we can't go to the market, so let's plan our route. No, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to Helsinki. We're so close. Okay, we're gonna wait. Stay the night, and then hopefully tomorrow. Tromsø, I really wish I knew how to pronounce that. Tromsø by night was no more endearing, and it was substantially colder. I did little but wander in a state of some isolation until I stumbled upon a bar in which several fishermen and women were playing chess matches. It was hardly fine entertainment. But I won a few matches, but it at least let me feel I had achieved some part of my cultural duties as a traveler. And now, Passepartout is bright. Now we better explore. Yes! The way... Oh wait, that is Smeerenburg. I walked the streets of Tromsø. Pleasant enough perambulation, thanks to the dramatic slopes and the glacial lagoon. There is a university, they tell me, though I cannot think who would endure such cold just to read books. But my ire was quickly stirred to keep me warm when I encountered one Mademoiselle Flischer, who stopped me on the street to ask without irony if it was a pleasure for one such as myself to visit her city. You mean as a Frenchman? But of course, she replied. Tromsø is the Paris of the North. We have been promised a liaison between our cities for many years now. Who else would you be? Tromsø is the second capital of Norway, you know. Mademoiselle, I am traveling around the world, I told her sternly. She looked downcast. Is that so? Oh, well, monsieur, enjoy Tromsø while you can. With that, she let go of my arm, and her grip had been iron-like, and she all but skipped away down the cobbled streets. Streets which were nothing but boulevards, I might add. I guess we're going to the market. Ooh, let's see if we can find... Oh, dusty road. Heavy storm. You know, we are going there. Yeah, let's just get rid of that. We're not going to Rome. You know, I don't know. We should get this just to be safe. Okay. Let's plan the journey. To Smearenburg. So it departs tomorrow. I had a chance. Let's see if I can negotiate. No. No, we'll just wait till tomorrow. Okay, well, let's go back. No, sometimes the buttons are a little confusing. Okay, to the hotel. Because £500 is a little expensive. With what remained of the day, I spent a few hours walking around and managed to have my pocket picked to the tune of £25. Great. Thank you, Tromsø. I will make sure to visit and keep my pockets unpicked. Gods, that was nonsensical. That's high winds and cold weather. This would be a bothersome route, but the English wardrobe should make things easier. Huh, okay. Hopefully we can get some cold weather gear. Hopefully. I have arranged transport for us, Monsieur Fogg said, cool as a cucumber. Where are we headed, Monsieur? I asked in interest. He shuffled his newspaper. We are heading north. He took a sip of tea. Very north. I held my tongue and waited. My master was in a strange mood, and I found myself intrigued. Smearenburg, he said, showing me the location marked on his almanac. It was indeed very north, perhaps even very, very north. And then, Monsieur Fogg looked up at me, a gleam in his eyes. Sometimes, Passepartout, he said slowly, the best way to untie a knot is not to untie it at all. Sometimes one must simply slice through it. The Alexandrian solution, I murmured, and I fancy his cool blue eyes warmed a little. Though, Monsieur, if you are Alexander the Great, does that make me, his loyal steed, Ekphilus? I could swear Monsieur Fogg's lips twitched a little. You are a valet, Passepartout, not a beast of burden, he said primly. He added, he built monuments to Bucephalus, you know. Gods, I can't remember how to pronounce that. Monsieur Fogg merely took a breath and rustled his newspaper, and ordered me to ready our bags to depart soonest. I found myself entirely full of gratitude for his habit of stiff reserve. So, relations have strengthened slightly. Sure, let's talk about what he knows about what we can sell and stuff. Smearenburg. Huh, I tend not to discuss such things. What about San Francisco? For instance, you can buy wax cylinders inscribed with music in San Francisco. You can sell for a profit in Regina, wherever Regina is. Okay, Gastown. I know that you can buy revolvers in Gastown, extremely valuable in New Orleans. Two more hunting balloon. Interesting. We're traveling by balloon. The captain of our balloon was a dark-browed woman by the name of Yana Starostina. Ooh. What exactly is it you hunt? I asked, eyeing a set of large harpoons lashed firmly to the upper deck. Whales, walruses, reindeer, the captain answered, jovially enough to even polar bears sometimes. Are you also a hunter? I inquired with a glance at the livid scar across her cheek. I was once, she said equably. Maybe I will be again. Once my little ones have grown, it would be very irresponsible to allow myself to be eaten by a walrus just now. With that, she was summoned to the navigation room, and I retired to our cabin to rest. Well, hopefully we can find... No, not enough time. The balloons seemed to make good time through the colder air. Below stretched an endless, ice-like sea. This was the top of the world, a place few men and women had ever seen, and yet still there was those who treated it as quite commonplace. I asked our captain if there were many people here in the north. She laughed. There are enough to start an argument, she replied, more than enough for that. And then we were sinking lower, and we watched a whaling ship bring in a bleeding leviathan from the sea as we settled down to land. Hopefully we can find a way north. Ooh, that's another way. I forgot about that. You can stop off at a bank to get more money. I don't know if we're going those routes. Let's do the bank. Nope, never mind. Too late for the bank. The stench of Smearenburg was all-pervading and mingled with coal smog and thick plumes of steam to form a foul miasma that hung thick and grim and unaccountably oily over the settlement. I shall never be able to wash this out of my jacket, I muttered glumly. It is Wales, a nearby fellow put in sagely in Finnish-accented English. I greeted him courteously, feeling the need to maintain some semblance of civilization in this place so lacking in it. The man pointed at several copper kettles nearby. They were set into brick ovens, belching black smoke from their chimneys. They render the whale blubber there for oil and fuel. You become accustomed to the smell. I introduced myself to him, and though he shook my hand, he shrugged as he did so, as though our meeting was of little note. I am Viti Jokinen, I don't know, he said. You don't look like seal hunters or smugglers, so what are you doing here? We are going around the world, I said with perhaps less enthusiasm than was warranted. Oh, are you adventurers? He pronounced the last with a generous smear of disdain. I had hoped perhaps that you were geologists. Do you often hope for geologists? I asked curiously. Seems a slim hope in these parts. It is the Arctic, he shrugged. After hunters and adventurers, scientists are the most common breed. Are you the local tour guide, then? I asked with ill grace. He smiled and pointed at his collar, where a copper lily pin gleamed metallic against his furs. I am an artificer. I introduced myself and my master politely. It was never a good idea to cross an artificer. I am here on an expedition to the North Pole, as it happens, he said casually enough. Monsieur Fogg's demeanor altered entirely. You don't say, he remarked. My good fellow, let me buy you whatever it is you drink here. I waited to see Monsieur Jokinen's response, but a moment later both he and my master were gone, away down the street and plotting like rogues. Okay, well, I got high hopes that we shall find a way through the Arctic. I was masterless in a cold city. I walked the cobbled streets and steam-vented, heated alleyways of Smearenburg. I watched a group of hard-bitten men and women flense a whale's flesh from its bones, chatted amiably with a group of shivering prostitutes at the dock, and narrowly avoided a brawl at one of the taverns. I could not stop thinking of the North Pole. It was a dream, a myth, as much as any real place. People died searching for it. They died or were lost for years and years upon the ice floes and desolate seas. They ate their sled dogs and dead friends and left their souls in the frozen wastes. These were my thoughts at the moment my master returned, cheeks reddened with an unnatural flush. Passepartout, he announced, slurring his words ever so slightly. We are going to the North Pole. Yes, monsieur. Yes, monsieur, I said. After all, what else was there to say? Oh, well, we're going directly to the North Pole. Okay, let's... embark. Arctic conditions. Oh, this is gonna be... it's gonna be troublesome. We don't have anything else. I confess I gaped like a simpleton when Monsieur Jokinen showed us the enormous contraption that would lead the polar expedition. We call it the Ice Walker, he said, patting one of the enormous metal skis attached to the machine's underside. I glanced at Monsieur Fogg, who merely nodded to himself and said, adequate. Monsieur Jokinen recovered a slight smile with one graceful mittened hand. The machine was vaguely boat-shaped, with a pilot's bubble of reinforced glass at the front. A wicked-looking harpoon was mounted at the back, above a vast hatch with no clear purpose I could discern, perhaps an airship hangar door. The hull itself resembled that of a kosh, used by the Pomor people for Arctic hunting. Rounded lines, an additional layer of lush skin planking, a protective false keel. Who designed this marvel? I asked absently, still absorbed in studying the angles and curves of the machine. She is the result of 3 years of work and hundreds of artificers' ingenuity and sweat, Monsieur Jokinen said, unable to keep the pride from his voice. Is this the guild's first polar expedition? I could see him consider lying, but he discarded the impulse. No, he did not elaborate. Even this expedition is quite secret. Why keep it that way? Surely it is obvious. His laugh sounded rough, almost unamused. The guild is far too pompous to let the public know of its failures. Monsieur Fogg cleared his throat behind me. Let us go aboard, Passepartout. His eyes looked overly bright. Feverish, perhaps. I could not help a flash of concern, for this was not a journey for someone in a susceptible condition. Oh great, did we make him sick by choosing that, and so he's gonna become ill and die on the journey? Well, let's groom him. Groom him like a cat or a monkey. At least we are a superior valet. We settled in and heard 2 sharp whistles that signaled our departure. With a rumble of boilers and a crack of ice, we began our expedition into the uncharted peril of the Arctic. Okay, and that's a good point to take a break. And next time we shall see if we can make it across the Arctic without our feverish master dying.